Really, for those.
Let me just quickly want to thank Liba Esther Fedowitz. Unfortunately, she's not on, but she was able to sponsor this class for the unity and peace of all Klal Yisrael. And this class should be dedicated to Ilu Nishmas Chana Mindel Bas Yisrael Ruchama Chaya from Abastu Pinchas Shindel Bas Moshe Harav Yisrael Noach Ben Yitzchak Matis Yahu Rabbi Sandina Bas Elchanan Rabbi Zachariah Shimon Ben Yitzchak HaKohen, and all of those who've been lost in this terrible tragedy. And Refuah Shalima for Zachariah Dov Ben Paral Shira, Rafael Chaim Meir Ben Simachasha, Liba Ahuva Bas Chana Riva, Pesach Betzalel Ben Chaya Batsheva, Sarah Sosha Bas Chaya Rachel Mendel Rachel Bas Imuna, Shoshana Ronit Bas Paral Rivka Malka Bas Aviva, Shimon Ben Sarah. And to Shem, that list should shrink and we should see Refuah.
Amen.
Okay.
Should we start? Okay. Yes. So I will again say, I think if anyone can put on their cameras, I can see your face. I would appreciate it. So we can all see you. And it's okay if, I don't know, your pores are not perfect or or there's a mess in the background. It's all good. But it's important to see each other's faces. So in as much as it's possible. Okay, so Barry asked me to come and talk, and I'm very happy to do it. We have, not everybody here is in Chutz La'aretz. We have some people here who are in Eretz Yisrael, yes? Or it's, no, Shirat Rachel is in Eretz Yisrael, that I know. Who else is in Israel now? Anybody? It's just the two of us? You and me? Shirat Rachel? Okay, I guess so. So we are... I would like to start, of course, with a parak of Tehillim. Yes, even though it's already nighttime here, it's the first part of the night for just about everybody else. It's still daytime, and I'm going to share the screen so we can say a parak of Tehillim together, and then we'll get started. Be'ezus Hashem, we're going to dedicate the recitation of the Tehillim for all the places that need Tehillim. Right? There's so many places that need a tefillah. And when we say a parak of Tehillim together, it's a very powerful spiritual construct that's happening there because there's like the parak of Tehillim that each one of us says individually, and even though we are not in the same space, that's why I like to see faces as much as possible in the spiritual dimension. So there are also all of these cross connections of you and me and you and me and she and you and me and she and she and she, all of these various combinations of neshamos that are doing an act of tefillah together. Is actually, we are however many 30 some odd women in Mirz Hashem. So this is like in terms of the possible combinations and permutations of all of us together is factorial 30 however many we are. If you remember your high school math, it's like 30 times 29 times 28 times 27 times 26. The numbers are astronomical of possible combinations and permutations that exist when all of us are saying a parak of Tehillim, we're praying together. And so this is something that is discussed in the Sefer Yetzirah. It's something that Rabbi Nachman of Breslov talks about in his Likutei Moharan, that an act of divine service that we do as a group is extremely powerful. So I'm gonna open up a parak of Tehillim, and we can all say it together. And if you want to, you can do whatever you want. Keep the mic on, keep the mic off. I'll keep my mic on, whatever you want to do. But we should have in mind that this is something that we're doing not as individuals only, but as a collective, as a group. We are saying the parak of Tehillim together. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and I hope everybody can see. Yes, can you all see? Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to make what's called a hiskashrus first. That's just what I do. That I bind myself to the merit of all of the tzaddikim who are still alive and those who are no longer with us, and I make a verbal declaration first before I pray. So I'm going to just say that quickly. הריני מקשרת לעצמי באמיר התהילים שלי לכל הצדיקים האמיתיים שבדורנו לכל הצדיקים האמיתיים שעופני עופר קדוש מאשר בארץ ובפרט רבנו קדוש צדיק יסוד עולם נחמן נביא בכל חוכמה ושמחה ואמון בנו נחמן ציבור נפגע זכותו יגן עלינו ועל כל ישראל אמן. Okay, everyone can see? Yes? I'm going to do it in Hebrew. למנצח מזמור לדוד. יענך אדוני ביום צרה, ישגבך שם אלוהי יעקב. ישלח עזרך מקודש, ומציון יסעדך. יזכור כל מנחוסיך, ועולסך ידש נסלה. ייתן לך חלבבך, וכל עצתך ימלא. נמננה בישועתך, ובשם אלוהינו נדגול. ימלא אדוני כל משאלותיך. עתה ידעתי כי יושיע אדוני משיחו, יענהו משמי קדשו, בגבורות ישע ימינו. אלה ברכב ואלה בסוסים, ואנחנו בשם אדוני אלוהינו נזכיר. הם עקרו ונפלו, ואנחנו קמנו נסודד. אדוני יושיע, המלך יעננו ביום קרנו. My father, Zechron Levracha's verse, for his name. His name was Eliezer. I mean, it always will be Eliezer. And so his verse starts with an aleph, ends with a resh. Is Ele v'recha ve'ele v'susim v'anachnu b'shem Hashem Elokeinu nazkir, which is like the essence of that chapter, chapter 20, that these go with their horses, and Ele v'recha ve'ele v'susim, these with their chariots, and those with their horses, and we go with our declaration of the name of Hashem. So it's the essence of that chapter, which is that even, we're in right now a moment when the Jewish people are engaged in very real hishtadlus, very real, we're engaged with real efforts, physical efforts, to overcome our enemies. And at the same time, we must always remember, right, that the victory and the success of the Jewish people only comes from the fact that we are connected with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we call him in his name. That's where it comes from. And we should never let go of this and always hold tight to him. Okay, so before we really get started, I told Barry what I wanted to talk about, but before we get started, most of you are not in Israel. So does anybody have any questions or feelings that they want to share or thoughts that are on their minds? And what do you guys what's going on with you in Chutz La'aretz? I'm concerned about you in Chutz La'aretz. I remember what it felt like when I was in college during the Gulf War. And I lived in the dorms. I was the only Shomer Shabbos in a university that had 30,000 students and 3,000 Jewish students. I was the only Shomer Shabbos undergrad who was living in the dormitories. In fact, I think, pretty much, period. And I remember I would go to class and I would run back. We had a tiny little television that we borrowed to have in the room. My roommate got it for me. I don't remember even where we got it from. So I could see the news. I could stay on top of the news. I would run to classes and I would run back, and I was like glued to the news. What is going on? And I remember every time there was a siren in Eretz Yisrael, my heart was going out of my chest, and I felt like I was dying. I felt like I can't even describe the feeling, but I'm sure you all understand. And I remember the worst part about it was that I felt, even though I had friends and everything, and people felt for me, whatever, but I was not in an environment where anybody really understood the pain that I was in over the suffering of my fellow Jews in Eretz Yisrael. I was very was a big eye-opener for me, those moments. So I keep telling my friends and my relatives and everyone who's in Chutz La'aretz, and my students, I feel for you, because I remember what it was like to be like on the, sort of not exactly on the outside looking in, but feeling like the not only pain, but also feeling so helpless and so at a distance. And so I'm sort of opening the floor. Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have anything they want to talk about or ask about or discuss before we get to the learning that I wanted to do? Because I think it's important that you should, have the space to do it.
I've just heard from Israel. I don't know if it's my turn or not. And my family, Paul, Benjamin, are all in the bunker up north. The sirens just went off.
Yes. They had sirens in the Tzafon just now. Yes.
That's in Kibbutz Bet Ramon, up north near Tveria. And so
all of the Galil and the Golan just got sirens. Yes, it's true. Yes.
Yes, so that's only just half an hour ago. So, and also in Modi'in, my cousins and all my family in Rehovot. My name's Evelyn, and the family made Aliyah straight after Mariah College. Paul did, and he went to university to study horticulture, and he's the head gardener of the Baha'i Temple in Israel and he has 100-odd people under him where they examine all the flowers and all the aphids and all the insects and everything. So we're very proud of an Australian man who's got 7 children on the front in Israel now. So even though that wonderful Jody Kofsky sends all these messages, I try my best to listen in. And thank you. I'm looking forward to the shiur.
And it's good to hear from you. And we all have our ksharim, we all have our connections that we have with individuals in Eretz Yisrael, whether it's family or friends or, Achinu Kol Beis Yisrael. So there's nobody who's distant and there's nobody who's far from this. Does anybody have anything about, any questions about what's going on or anything that they, feel like they want to bring up before we learn? Maybe afterwards you will. You want to learn. All right, Yala. So I told Barry that when she asked me if I would participate, I said of course, and she said, "What should we call the shiur?" So I said, "I don't know, call whatever you want. You tell me what you want, and I'll talk about whatever you want." So she left me like a little space there, and I realized she wanted me to say what I wanted to talk about. So I will. So the thought that immediately came into my head, which is the thing that's mechazik me very, very much, and it's not only me, it's everybody. I think everyone is feeling this very much, is this wonderful, beautiful achdus that comes forth when the Jewish people are under pressure. Now, we would like to be able to see it when the Jewish people are not under pressure. But the fact that it emerges when we are under pressure is something that is very powerful. And I want to go in more deeply into the significance of this and what it means. Now, for those who have been in my classes in the past and so on, so you probably already know, I am very, very deeply connected with the Sefer Tomer Dvorah of the Ramak, of Moshe Cordovero. And it is a Sefer I go back to again and again, especially the first parak, where he goes through and explains the depth of the personal avoda, like not only the meaning of, but what it means for us, of each of the Shlosha Sevidos Shel Rachamim, 13 higher attributes of divine mercy. Now, mercy, I spoke a lot about before, in classes before, during Elul and during the Yom Noraim, etc. And it feels like we haven't actually left the Yom Noraim because this happened on Simchas Torah, everything opened up on Simchas Torah. The closing of the Yom Noraim would have been on Simchas Torah, but in a sense, it has carried with us and it is continuing with us because the atmosphere and the sense of being in the purview of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and feeling like we're in the midst of something, and we are in the midst of something that is so much bigger and so much more than our everyday lives. So we have not left we may have left the high holidays in a sense, but we haven't actually, because the days of awe, I feel, are very much still upon us. And that's good. That's good because the days of awe are also days of slicha and rachamim. They are days of the opening up of the channels of mercy. And so at this time, what we're seeing is this beautiful overflowing, like my youngest is not back in yeshiva. So, and he's been like, he's got one brother who's on base in the Jordan Valley, has another brother who is a medic. So he's very, worked up. And so I said, we got to have something productive to do with all this energy. So he went to volunteer. And he came back and I said, how many people were there? How many hours are they doing it? What'd you do today? What have you been doing? Making sandwiches, this kind of sandwiches, that kind of sandwiches. They sat there making sandwiches for, the whole afternoon. And it's just a constant flow of people. And that's just one little place where people are coming out because they don't know what to do with themselves. They want to be helpful. They want to be to provide something, and everyone's just looking for a means to which to do it. So this outpouring of togetherness, or for me personally, I get very, very I am so touched and moved is not the right word. I am like I feel like like I'm breathing. Every cell of my body is getting a fresh hit of oxygen, of spiritual oxygen, every time I hear about someone else who came in another flight full of people who are coming in, kids who are coming back in to serve Miluim, to come in to do the reserve duty, and all of the acts of chesed that have gone on around that, about helping them with tickets and people sending tziyud, people sending supplies and so on. And this is just, I'm speaking from the heart. This is the kind of thing that for me, like, I feel that this is, this is the salvation of the Jewish people. The fourth attribute of divine mercy, of the higher attributes of mercy, as delineated in the book of Micha, which we recite during Tashlich, not the Hashem Kel Rachum B'Chanun Erech Apayim V'Av Chesed V'Chulei that is in Parshas Kisisa, but in the higher attributes of mercy as delineated in the book of Micha. Mikel kamocha, nosei avon v'over al pesha, l'she'eris nachal aso, lo achzik la'ad apo ki chafetz chesed hu, yashuv yoachamenu, yechbosh v'nosenu v'tashlich v'mtzulos yam, kol chatasam titin emes Yaakov chesed la'per mash nishbat v'asinu mekedem. What I just said has 13 different components to it, and each one of them is a totally different channel of divine mercy, which is the highest form of God's mercy, which is going to be activated in order to bring about the Geula Shlema, the full redemption. Because the Navi, the prophet Yeshayahu said, "Uverachamim gdolim akabtzech," I will gather you in from exile, "Berachamim gdolim," with great mercy. And the great mercy that's being referred to there, as it says in the Zohar Kadosh, Is Rachamim, Is Rachamim. There are different types or degrees of mercy. There's a lower kind of mercy, which is more transactional and more quid pro quo, where if you're worthy of mercy, then you get mercy visited upon you. But if you blow it, so then you don't. That is a lower kind of mercy. It's transactional. It's more quid pro quo. And that is not the mercy that's going to save. It's not the level or degree of mercy that will save the Jewish people and heal the world from all of the damage that it's been through and all of the places where it needs to be redeemed. What we need is rachamim gdolim, the big rachamim, which is described as being the higher rachamim, the higher divine mercy that is expressed in the 13 attributes of mercy as we find them in the book of Micha, not in the book of Shmos. Okay, so that is what I just said. Like we say during Tashlich, if you're Ashkenazic, if you're Sephardic, you recite a section from the Zohar. But if you're Ashkenazic, then that's the language, right? Mi kil kamocha b'chulei. Now, the fourth of them, which is what I want to focus on, is the attribute that's called l'she'eris nachalaso. That God acts with abundant mercy to she'eris nachalaso, to the remnant of his portion, which is of course the Jewish people, the remnant of his portion, and the whole premise, the premise of the Ramak's Tomer Devorah, which he reiterates again and again in both the introductory material and as he goes through from section to section, as he says, when we need and when we want and we need to draw down into the world the fullness of the holy and healing expression of an attribute of Hashem's mercy. And also, I would say it's not only the attributes of mercy, it's also the rest of the attributes. But when we want to draw that down, okay, so you can't do it entirely by praying about it. You have to do the midah, meaning we're created in the image of God, right? It says in the Torah that human beings are created b'tzelem Elokim, right? Na'aseh Adam b'tzelmeinu kidmuseinu. Let us make man in our image after our likeness. Yes. So this tzelem Elokim, which is not physical, this image of God in which we're created, has to do with the attributes, our emotional, psycho-spiritual attributes that are the activation points of how we conduct ourselves in this world. They're the main channels of action, thought, speech, and action through which we are able to interact with ourselves, with each other, and with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with Hashem. Okay, that is our Tzelem Elokim. Our physical bodies are analogs, our physical analogs. They have resemblances, which I'm not going to go into, with to each of those different attributes. From the 13 attributes of mercy, which parallel qualities of the Kesser. They're super rational, they're super intellect, they're beyond what is merely a thought process, but it has to do with what you want and what you're yearning for. That's called your crown. So those attributes of mercy are called crown attributes. And then all the way down through your mind, your mental attributes, and through your emotional attributes, and through the physicality of yourself, all of these different, we'll say that we'll call them like the prime movers, right, of every single part of every main part of ourselves. That's our Tzelem Elokim. That's the divine image in which we've been created. So up here at the crown, this is called the highest of the highest part of ourself. The highest part of yourself is not what you're thinking. Okay, let's start from the bottom. It's not what you're doing. It's not what you're feeling. It's not what you're saying. And it's not what you're thinking. The highest part of yourself is what you want. Is what you really want. Okay? So situations that we are put into individually, collectively, the main place where we get activated, which is the engine that runs everything else, the rest of the apparatus of what we're thinking, what we're saying, what we're feeling, what we're doing, right? What's the main engine of all of that? What we want. Now, this idea of mercy, the relationship between mercy and will, what you want. We don't normally make the correlation between the two of them, but they're both associated with this highermost quality of ourselves, which is called our crown, which is higher than thought and higher than speech and higher than feeling and higher than action. Okay, so what does ratzon, desire, what you want, have to do with mercy? So this is the point we need to talk about. In the fourth attribute of divine mercy, of higher mercy, as delineated in the book of Micha, in the prophet Micha, we have the fourth attribute is called the She'eres Nachlaso, the portion, the remnant of his portion. That means the Jewish people are called a piece of him. We are a piece of God. But what it really comes down to is that we are a piece of each other. We are pieces of each other in God, and pieces of God in each other. That's the essence of what the Jewish people are to one another. That is what we are to one another. So the fact that moments of stress, right, times that are stressful and that are difficult, tend to bring out this essential relationship for us. We are fully aware of this dynamic. It's from the beginning of time like this for us, from the beginning of our peoplehood, this dynamic of, as Moshe Rabbeinu said, right? Like we're like, when things are good, we sort of, okay, we can handle things on our own. When things are difficult, then we really start to rely on Hashem and have more unity with each other. Okay, we're familiar with the dynamic, and yet we always have a hard time carrying through on it into times and situations that are not times of the stress and the strain. So we have now an opportunity to really, really work on this, and hopefully it will carry us powerfully through into times of peace and plenty and goodness and safety and security, okay? Because we don't have to be forever and perpetually with our backs against the wall to bring out the good qualities of the Jewish people. We want to be able to carry this out also in times of goodness, right? So what does it mean to be, well, I said I'm going to make we'll want to clarify the connection between ratzon, between the desire and the mercy. So if for those who have learned Torah Devorah, everybody always has the question about Torah Devorah, which is like, it's so superhuman, like what he describes as the way that we need to behave with each other, and each of these 13 dimensions of mercy and loving kindness and compassion that we need to have for each other, and their roots and what they mean and how you activate them and how you express them. So everyone always has these questions like, but this is so hard, it's so superhuman to be able to act this way and to be this way with other people. And every time I teach this sefer, and I usually go back to it in some way or another every year. Like I don't think there's every year where I'm not in some way going back or, revisiting Torah Dvorah. And so whether it's in Sphira time or whether it's Yom Noraim time, usually it's this way and that way. I do the first part of the book during Elul, and the latter part of the book I do during Sphira time, but it doesn't matter. Everybody always asks the question, how am I supposed to be the way that he describes? I mean, it seems like so completely beyond our regular capacities. Like, what, I'm supposed to be that generous with myself and my good opinion and my judgments with other people and what I'm willing to do for them and what I always find whenever people bring up that kind of an obstacle is it's like a very kind of revolutionary thing to say, even though it sounds so simple. What on earth does, like, recognizing that sometimes you have to have limits or boundaries with people, have to do with what you want for them? Like, it could be an actual practicality. You may not always be able to give everything and give your all and go above and beyond, but nothing stops you from wanting to be able to do that. There is no limit to the desire that you have to express compassion to other Jews. Yes? Yeah? Is that okay? So that, for a lot of people, this is like a very big hurdle to get over, because we're always we kind of like hit this brick wall of, but I can't do that with him. Like, he did something wrong. He does wrong things. He's this, that, even now, like, how much terrible nonsense, I don't want to say nonsense, but like, because it's coming from a good place, always. It's coming from very lishma places of, judgments about what was going on down south and what were they doing there in the holiday and v'chule, Hashem yirachem. Okay, this kind of language, and it's and I have to say, but what does it have to do with my yearning and desire and wanting to see the good for all of the Jewish people, regardless of who they are, where they came from, what they did, where they were, how they were acting or not acting? That there's no limit on how I'm feeling and my desire for the good of the Jewish people, right? And that's inclusive of everybody, without regard, with no limit, with no constraint. I don't care what they do. I don't care how they behave. I don't care how they're living. I don't care what they're doing with themselves. On one level, I care. Of course, I care. Hashem yirachem. You know what? But what I care about much more, the higher place, the crown place, what I care about so much more is their welfare, and that they should be taken care of. They should come home safe. They should be well. They should have refuah shlema without any regards whatsoever to any aspect of judgment on anybody or anything about their behavior or who they are, where they come from, or what they're doing with themselves. Because there's no constraint. There's no constraint to the higher quality of mercy. The higher qualities of mercy are unconstrained. And they have to do with my ratzon. They have to do with what I want for other Jews. So I'm going to go in the text now, okay? And I'm not going to put up the text. Should I put up the text? I'm not going to put up the text. I don't think so. I'm just going to walk through it, and I'm going to translate it and talk about it, okay? Like I would in a regular class. This is the fourth quality. Pardon me?
May I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
How does this interface with the 7 midos that we, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, etc., etc.? How does this interface with those?
So that's a very good question. So we have, I'll give a quick summary, okay? There's 13 qualities of the Keser. Then there are 3 qualities, or actually it's really 2, another 2, right? If we count Keser, we don't count Das, we count Chochmah and Bina, all right? So it means the bridge between them is we have what you want, right? All this yearning and desire and endless mercy without any constraint whatsoever. And then, and other qualities as well. I mean, the Ramak also goes through Anava and many other important qualities that are part of the Keser. I'm focusing on 13 attributes. And then you have all the ways in which you start to think about and process what you're going to do, like how you're going to work and how you're going to actualize all of this good big desire that you have. Then it trickles down further, and it gets down into the place of Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, Malchus, down into the sphere of action. And sometimes you have to make limits. That's called engaging now with the Midas HaGvura. So if I have somebody in my life who, I don't want to go into this specifically now, but I'll spend 2 minutes on it. If I have someone in my life that my relationship with them is like, I love them so dearly and I want to help them so much, but the more that I give to them and the more generous I am with them, the worse it is for them. Right? We call this enabling. Everybody always has the enabling questions. So you say, okay, it could be that when it comes down to bitzua, when it comes down to the level of action, that I may have to tell the person that I love you so much, but because I love you so much, I cannot give you the thing that you want from me because I can see that it's not the right thing for you. That's already the process of keser down to the mochin. I've made an evaluation based on discernment and information, and then I have to make perhaps a limit. But nothing. This is the place where people get stuck. Maybe I have to say no, but what does it have to do with how much I have compassion and mercy on the person? My midos hakeser still stay active, quite the contrary. Instead of it being a tightness of the harshness of gvura when I have to say no, it becomes an expression of the higher qualities of mercy. Because I love this person, I have to say no and I have to make a limit, but it doesn't have any constraint on what I want for them, how much I want the good for them. And so for us down here, in the place where we live and breathe, when we have to say no to someone or we recognize we have to make a boundary, also we tend to find ourselves with our mercy being cut off as well. We don't feel the same way. And that's the place where we have a lot of avoda to do. That's the place where there's a lot of work, because nothing, it prevents us from continuing to feel and to yearn for and to have a desire for the ultimate good and the now good for everybody, right? Even if in actual practice, I might have to make a limit and a boundary. But what on earth does it have to do with how I feel and what I want for the person?
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Okay, so let's go on. Hine, HaKadosh Baruch Hu misnaheg im Yisrael b'derech zeh. This quality of the she'eris nachlaso, that he calls us she'eris nachlaso, the remnant of his portion. The Ramak tells us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, conducts himself with the Jewish people also in this manner, because each of these is like a separate channel, a distinct channel of relationship that we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Lomar, and how does this, how does it express itself? Ma'aseh Yisrael, v'hem krovai. It's as if, it gives us insight, as if the divine internal narrative, is, what should I do for the Jewish people? Meaning, what can I do? Hem krovai. They're my relatives. It's like when you get the phone call from the close relative who says, I need you to help me out, and you don't really want to help this person out, but hem krovai. Who else is going to help them? If not me, who? They're mine. Don't hide yourself from your flesh, right? She'er basar li'imahem. Okay, so now the Ramak is focused on the language of she'er, she'erit. Now in Hebrew, the term she'erit, remnant of, when you have she'eriot. She'eriot in modern Hebrew means to have leftovers. You make meatloaf and you put it in the fridge. It's called she'eriot. Okay, so she'er also means food, something that's nourishing, right? When a man marries a woman, he commits himself to providing her with she'er, ksus, and ona. He has three primary obligations to her, and one of them is he has to provide for her. Why is it called she'er? Shin Aleph Resh. Why is it called she'er? Because she is she'erit b'saro. Because by marriage, she becomes closer to him than even a first-degree blood relative. She's now called the closest possible relative. And it's true. That's what marriage does. It creates a relationship that's called being related by blood, even closer than blood, in a certain sense, because there are certain halachic distinctions for husbands and wives that go beyond normal levels of shlichus that one Jew can do for another naturally. So there's a level of relationship that exists only because of the desire that they have to be connected with each other, right? How do you forge this relationship of she'er basaro, of a spouse being called the remnant of one's flesh, right? That's what the spouse is called in the Torah. How do you create it? Only through ratzon. In fact, if you were first degree relative, you couldn't get married, right? Can't marry a spouse who's a first degree, who's an actual relative. Instead, you have a desire to create a relationship between the two of you. And as soon as you have this ratzon, to have this relationship, then you have the closest possible relationship that it's possible to have only through the activation of your will to join together. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, She'er basar li'imahem. She'er basar li'imahem. We are relatives to each other. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says about us. Shehem bazug l'HaKadosh Baruch Hu. because the Jewish people are called the bride, the partner of Hashem. Basug is very interesting. You know, there's different ways to talk about a spouse. Yes? We have Isha, that's usual. And then we have this term that actually has become like such a common, it's a more common term that's used, and it's a common term that's used in Israel for people who don't like to use the traditional terminology. So they call, and it means it's also inclusive, by the way, of a non-marital relationship where they call each other partners. Yes? Ben bat zug, right? The ben zug, the bat zug. But when the Ramak uses this language, it doesn't say that he uses the terminology of bat zug, which implies not only the marital bonds, but also a relationship of not only closeness, but a kind of parity in the relationship. The korela biti, the dimensions of this relationship are so complex, this relationship that we have with Hashem, because we are called his partner, wife, yes, bride, and he calls us his daughter, biti. He calls us achuti, my sister. He calls us imi, my mother. Where does Hashem call us bride and sister and mother? Batzug, all of these four dimensions of this relationship. Where do we find it? It's in Shir Hashirim. Achuti, rayati, tamati, v'chulei. Right? My sister, my bride, my perfect one, my dove. Now, imi only appears once. It appears in Shir Hashirim, fairly close to the beginning, where the time of receiving the Torah is called Yom Chasunaso Uviyom. It says the crown Ba'atarashi Itralo Imo, that there was a crown that his mother, Akash Baruch Hu's mother. Okay, just hold that thought for a second, right? That impossible thought. Hold that for a sec. The Akash Baruch Hu's mother crowned him with B'yom chasunaso u'v'yom simchas libo, on the day of his wedding, on the day of his heart's rejoicing, which we say is, in one dimension, is Kabbalas Torah. The moment that the Jewish people accepted the Torah, the relationship, we put a crown, kaviyachol, on Hashem's head, but this is called the mother. Now, of course, the essential relationship of mother is also provider, right? That's the one place where we find this language. It's actually not the one place, I'm sorry. In Parshas Hazinu, it comes up again, where it says, Tzur Yulad Chateshi. Tzur Yulad Chateshi is also over there. This language, this kind of concept, that the relationship with Hashem that we have is so multidimensional that sometimes we have also something that we give to the creator of the universe, which is, of course, impossible for us to imagine. What on earth could we possibly give to the creator? Well, we give him a crown. Is to say we have the ability to freely, we have our own individual will, which is our Tzelem Elokim, yeah? And we have the ability to freely assume upon ourselves willingly, right? There's that will. We're to freely and willingly choose to do his will and carry out his will. And when we do that, we give him a gift, and we become, in a sense, kaviyachol, we're giving Hashem something, which is the only thing actually that we have to give him at all, which is the free-willed, willing carrying out of his will. That's the only thing we have to give. And when we do it, Kadosh Baruch Hu relates to it as if we have given him something, as if we are giving him something that is sustaining and nourishing and important, like a mother would take care of her own. Okay, so this language of imi is so mind-blowing, right? And Chazal explained it. What does it mean? What does it mean that we are giving something to Hashem? That's what we give. As Chazal described to us in their Medrash on Shir Hashirim, this multi-dimensional nature of the relationship that we have with Hashem. Bride, sister, daughter, mother. Yisrael Am Krovo. And of course it says in Tehillim and Kuf Mem Ches, which is every day, Yisrael Am Krovo, that the Jewish people are called, that we normally translate this as Am Krovo, his close people, the people who are close to him. But of course, in Hebrew, Karov also means relative, right? That we are his flesh and blood, kaviyachol, so to speak. Okay? Now we know that Akash Baruch Hu, the creator of the universe, is no corporeality to him whatsoever. So in what sense are we his kaviyachol, flesh and blood? Mamash, Kur v'yesh lo imahem. He has an actual closeness with us. Imahem ubanavhim. We are his children, meaning we are extensions of him. We are part and parcel of him. He is within us. We come from him. V'hainu, and that's why this fourth quality of mercy is l'she'eris nachlaso, that he has an open channel of mercy for the Jewish people who are like Kaviyachol, the flesh and blood of the Creator, part and parcel of him. He is in us. We are from him. L'shon she'er basar, like relatives. Sof heim nachlaso. Now that language that the Ramak uses here, sof, is like saying, it's also a very kind of modern idiom, even though the Ramak lived hundreds of years ago. But sof, it means like, and in the end, meaning no matter what's happened, no matter where we've gone, no matter what we've done, no matter how we behave, no matter what we've done wrong, sof, in the end, what are we? We are his portion. Uma Umar. And what can I say? This is like, again, the Ramak is putting Kaviyachol, giving us an insight into the divine internal narrative. Uma Umar, what can I say? Im ani shem, harei ha'ke'ev alai. If I punish the Jewish people, who suffers? I'll suffer. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, if I punish the Jewish people, I'll suffer. As it says, B'chol tzaratam lo sar. In all of our suffering, he feels pain. Now, I want to pause here and talk about this for a minute. Let's get into this like higher aspect of mercy again, where we tend to get stuck in the lower aspect of mercy. And there is a lower aspect of mercy. Nechama down here in the realm of the, not Nechama Wells, but Nechama Burnham, yes? Down here in the realm of the 7 lower midot, there's also a quality of mercy down there, but that quality of mercy down there is between Chesed and Gvura. It's called Rachamim down there also, but it's very quid pro quo. So think about it like this. If your child did something that was really ageret, as you say, like really, not okay, or it's not all right what they did, and you have to punish them, okay, so let's be real with each other. You know how that old cliche about parents, the parent who says, this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you. But when children do things that are margiz biotir, when they do things that are very, very annoying and very angering, it actually does not hurt us as much as it hurts them. That's the truth. It doesn't hurt us as much as it hurts them, because there's a part of us, this is our lower midas harachamim, where we kind of we're invested also in them getting it, because they've done something that has touched us in a way that we didn't like. Okay, and I think it's okay to be honest as parents, as this is a normal of it, and we want to be completely invested only in the good of the child. And yeah, I really mean it. It's sort of like me looking back now with my grown children. At the time, I told myself that the reason why I gave this onesh, or I said this word, was because I meant it for your good. But now that I'm older and a little bit more mature, I'm able to see that it was because I was immature and I was taking out my anger on you, and I was frustrated. I didn't like my will defied, all that stuff, which we don't like to acknowledge at the time, but it's there. That's called the rachamim. That's down there in the lower 7 midos. It's very intermingled with a lot of dinim. It's got a lot of judgment involved. And it's not really the full expression of mercy. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, right, when we hear from the Ramak, that Hashem says, it's in the pasuk, b'tzarosam lo tzar. When we suffer, he suffers. That's not like the lower mercy, like us, this will hurt me more than it hurts you. No, it means he suffers when we suffer, because he does not want us ever to suffer, no matter what we've done, no matter how far we've gone, no matter what mistakes we've made, no matter how much pigiyat kavod we did against him, no matter how much we've insulted him or offended him or defied him. B'tzarasam lo tsar. That's Hashem's higher mercy, is that he truly, there is suffering on high, even when we deserve the punishments that we have to experience. Not like we say to our children, but like we wish we could get to, but we actually are not there. So this is something that's very important to bear in mind, right? When the Ramak uses this language, we have to really feel it. The tsarasam lo tsar. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the higher realm of mercy, does not in any way want to cause us suffering. And if he has to bring about suffering, that he suffers more than we suffer when we suffer. He suffers even more. Ay. As it says, b'chol tzarasam lo tsar. Ktiv ba'alef. B'chol tzarasam lo tsar. Now, there's a Kriya Ktiv, in the verse where that's written in Yeshayahu. There's a Kriya Ktiv, there's an aleph in the word tzarasam where it doesn't belong. Tzarasam tsar is tzadik reish. It doesn't need an aleph in there. If there's an aleph in there, you may read it, but you see it when you open the verse. And that means, lomar, that aleph that's inserted there in our tsar, our constriction, the place that's tight for us and difficult for us, that's called the tsar, right? The tsar, not with an ayin, but tzadik reish, the narrow place for us. So in that narrow place, which is what we experience, in the pasuk, there's an aleph inserted in there, not an ayin, an aleph. You know what the aleph means there in the middle, between our narrow places, the tzaddik and the reish? It means that there's a magia lepele elyon. Pele aleph, the letter aleph, aleph lamed pei. If you reverse the letters around, is the word pele. Pele elyon means it reaches to the highest places. When we're suffering, the aleph is down there with us in the middle of the suffering, experiencing the suffering right there with us. And it goes and it's experienced on high in the deepest, worst place. B'chol shekein ledu partzufin, shebehen ikar ha'anhaga. This is something that's experienced in the highest realms. If we think it's only about us and our pain, no. HaKadosh Baruch Hu feels our pain together with us. Krinan bevav lo tsar. And we read it with a vav. Lo tsar. And as we find in the pasuk as well in Shoftim, that this is lo tsar. He experienced kaviyachol. Sorry about that. Something just came through. Okay. HaKadosh Baruch Hu cannot bear. And when you say your Tillim, right? I hope everybody's been increasing their Tillim. Say Tillim together. Say Tillim by yourself. It's very, very good place to put all these feelings that everybody has. All your worries and all your sadness, whenever you're feeling overwhelmed with what's going on and you're contemplating things, you go right away, you open that Tillim and you just start to say, the prakim are healing, the prakim help. They help you and they help the Jewish people as a whole. It's healing, it's good for the world. So when it says, what does David HaMelech say again and again throughout Tehillim? It's not only that it's unbearable for me, it's unbearable for you, Ribbon Shalom. What's going on is unbearable to you. What's going on to us is not about us. What's happening to us, it's about you, Ribbon Shalom. And why? Because we are of him, he is of us, we are all one together with him. Okay, so the Ramak has given us a framework in which to understand the quality of this midah in Hashem's relationship with us, correct? Now he does exactly what he does with the rest of the midot, with the rest of the attribute. He then tells us what does it mean in terms of our relationships with each other. Because if we want to be able to open up this midah, it's a gewaldige midah, you understand? This is the midah that when you open this is the quality that when you open your Tillim and you use these words, or even your own words, when you talk to Hashem, you say, Boshim, how can you stand Stars Yisrael? How can it be that there are babies and women and children, old people who are taken down into Gaza, Shem Yerachem, like Shimshon Gibor, taken down into Gaza? How on earth can you bear Stars Yisrael? What happens and what's going on here? And all of these, everybody's been activated in all of the chaos that's been caused. Yes? How can you bear it? Well, you know when he cannot bear it? When we cannot bear the suffering of other Jews. When we care about each other this way, what he just described is going to translate it over into our own relationships with other Yidden, with other Jews. When we conduct ourselves in this manner with each other, then we will find that he will also not be able to bear tzarasam uklonam shel Yisrael. He will not be able to bear the suffering and the humiliation of the Jewish people. Now, let's see. So what does this come down to, practically speaking? Because it's got to come down to practicalities. It's never just pretty ideas. It has to be something we can activate and work on a daily basis, that we can, like, literally think about it like a little pinhole, right, in a barrier, a little pinhole in a barrier of this beautiful big channel of the flow of Rachamim. And what you want to do is open that up and expand it through your own relationship and your own way of being with other Jews, so that this beautiful Hanahaga, this way of HaKadosh Baruch Hu being with us, becomes open, revealed, manifest, is drawn down into the world. Oh, Romy, I'm so happy you're here, because today is the day of Hu Mamish. And I was thinking of you. Romy is one of our friends here. Okay, so I was thinking of you. Okay. So is it with one another. Kol Yisrael hem sher basar elu im elu. All of the Jewish people are first degree relatives, one to the other. We are all part of a single organic whole. Everybody uses this terminology of avas chinam v'chuli. It's all very beautiful. But the Ramak tells us very specifically, how does this look in action? It's not just words, and it's not just a feeling. It has to come down to action. Mipnei sheneshamot klulot yachad. All of the souls of the Jewish people are part of a single organic whole. We are part of a collective single soul that's called Knesset Yisrael. Yesh b'zeh chelek zeh u'b'zeh chelek zeh. We are all composites and intermingled one with the other. All of us together, a single collective soul with many, many different intermingled parts. L'chach eino domeh merubim ha'osim es hamitzvah. And therefore, when many people come together, here we are, however many we are, about 50 women, when we come together to learn together, to daven together, whatever it is we do together, and al-achas kama v'kama, you go to shul, you go here, you do a mitzvah, you have people davening together, whatever it is. So when we are together doing a mitzvah, what we are doing actually is each of us shining our component parts that relate to one another on the soul level. We are shining them and joining them and hooking them into each other. So we're actually doing something in a more whole manner. This is because we are all inherently part of a single organic whole. That means that we look different from each other and we appear to be we are in different bodies. Yeah. But it's just basically like, cells also are in semi-permeable membranes. All part of cells are part of tissues, are part of organs, are part of systems, are part of a single organic whole, which is one body, right? So even though there are all these subdivisions and stuff, and each individual cell is also its own little self-encapsulated entity, nevertheless, it is part of a single organic whole with all of these constituent parts working in concert with one another, a single genetic code that binds them, a single impetus and life impulse that binds them, a single sort of destiny, right, that binds them. All of them together. Okay, so this is really about the idea of the hiskalus. Once you have a minyan going, right? So those who make up the first 10 of a minyan, when it comes time to daven, so they get, even if 100 people come afterwards, the hashlama of the minyan, that first inherent group, we'll call it like that critical mass, right? Of 10 Jews getting together, each one of them shining each different soul faculty together and into each other and binding together. So then that's already called a whole. And even if others come afterwards, they get the schar of all of them. Because 10 individuals, because they each have 10 soul faculties, are like 10 times 10, each one individually. This I already explained. I'm not going to go into depth because it's not the point I want to make. It is for this reason that the Jewish people have mutual responsibility for one another. The concept, which is the halachic concept, it is an actual reality of our rebus, that we have responsibility for one another. How can you have responsibility for someone else? You barely have responsibility for yourself. I'm supposed to be responsible for him, for her, for everybody else. I have a hard enough time being responsible for me. How does Arevos work even if we are separate individuals? Why on earth should I have responsibility for the other person? How am I supposed to have some kind of impact on the other person, on their behavior, on what they do, how they are? How am I supposed to influence them if we are so disparate from one another? Arevos is based on the idea of Hiskalalus, that in the soul we are all connected in the same root. And because of that, I do have an impact on other people. My desires for them, my yearnings for them, my prayers for them, my aspirations for them. And it's not talking now about giving mussar to people. No. It's about what I feel, what I want for them. Yeah? That's the essence of Arevos, what I'm praying for them. There's not a single Jew who has ever walked on the face of the planet, who's walking on the face of the planet now, who will ever walk on the face of the planet. And even the Nephilim, even those who were miscarriages in the womb, all of them, every single one of them, I am inherently connected. And you, and all of you, and all of us are inherently, deeply, essentially, and unendingly connected with one another in the deepest of levels, in the most essential way. We cannot be separated from one another, not at all. If one person sins, then I not only damage myself, I damage the part of the other person. It means the rest of Klal that's inside of me. I have responsibility to the rest of everybody because you're in me, I'm in you, we are in each other. And it's for the good, and it's also for the things that are not so good. And therefore, the little bit of you that's inside of me, I'm responsible for that. I need to protect it. I need to take care of it. I need to cultivate its good because you are in me and I am in you. And I'm not going to quote the Beatles on this one, even though I think it's very appropriate. But Barry wants me to. I am he as you are me, and we are all together. Okay? It's like, forgive me, Hashem, but it's like the best expression I could think of, you know? So we are not only just cousins, brothers, sisters, it goes way beyond that. You are in me, I am in you. We are all in each other, and we therefore have mutual responsibility for one another. And therefore, what does it mean in action? The first primary obligation, I have to want good for other Jews. I have to want to see good for other Jews. And when good things happen to other Jews, again, he's not making restrictions here. He's good if he's someone that I should have a good eye on if he's like this, or if he's like that, or if he acts this way, or if he acts that way. He doesn't put that restriction on it, because Chas v'Shalom, we should have Hashem looking upon us with such a very restricted view of who's included in his first-degree relatives, who's part of him and who's not. Chas v'Shalom. So therefore, we don't make distinctions, and we want the best for everyone, no matter who they are. And the other person's covenant has to be chashuv to me. When you hear other people saying disparaging things about Jews, and even if they mean it ki'ilu l'shem shamayim, stand up for them as if you were standing up for yourself. You don't allow the covenant of another Jew to be put down. Harehu mamish, because that other Jew is me. Who mamish. Everybody is me. You all me. I am you. We are all each other. I am he as you are me, and we are all together. Okay? Who mamish. I think that's what we need. Signs all over the place. This is my favorite. I love the Tomer Devorah, but I think it's my favorite 3 words in all of Tomer Devorah. Who mamish. There is no distinction in the spiritual realm between us. We are each other bound up together. And therefore, we were commanded this impossible commandment. You shall love your fellow Jew as yourself. How are you supposed to love him like yourself? You love yourself. Well, hu manish. Well, he's me, and I'm he, and I'm she, and she's me. and we are all together. Returns in its tavenu. Gehavti rechakemoch ra'ui sheyitze bekashrus chaveiro v'lo yidaber begnuso klal. And therefore, because we are all bound up together, I want to only see fellow Jews, my fellow Jews. And again, he is not implying here any restrictions whatsoever on this. Not because of what people do, who they are, who they live with, how they live. Lo echpat lanu, okay? Ra'ui sheyitze bekashrut chaveiro. I want to be able to only hear of, see of, and think of my fellow Jew as being the best, in the best way, with the best of everything, should be well and be their highest, best, most wonderful self, and never to speak disparagingly of another Jew, and not to want anything that's negative for any other Jew. Just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in his higher mercy, not in the lower mercy, in the higher mercy, he doesn't want us to be disparaged. He doesn't want us to suffer. Umitam hakurva, because of this degree of closeness between us, af hu lo yotze begnus chavero v'lo b'tzaro v'lo b'kilkulo, and therefore we must not want at all anything negative or anything bad or anything detrimental to happen to any Jew at all. Ve'iralo mimenu ke'ilu hu mamash haya sharui bo'oto tsar. And we must feel the pain of our fellow Jews as if it was our own. O bosa tova, or flip it, or to rejoice in the joys of other Jews as if it was the joy that had come to us as well. Now, word of advice with the last few minutes that we have here. On the one hand, because of the principle of huhu mamish, you have to have his dahus. We must identify deeply with the pain and suffering of other Jews, always, not just now, yes? At the same time, every person has to do due diligence to ensure that they are not exposing themselves to information, media, images, or text, or anything like this that overwhelms them and puts them into a position of feeling depressed, in despair, or overwhelmed, or paralyzed, or any of these other, you need to know yourself, okay? The identification with the tzaros of the Jewish people does not mean you should be sitting and wallowing in bad news all day. Okay, I'm putting that out there. It's a very important thing. You have to be very careful. I spent half an hour on the phone right before this class dealing with somebody from Chutz La'aretz who is sitting and sittering and is sitting in America, and she's got so much fear and so much worry, v'chule. And I spent half an hour trying to mechazik her. Listen, I live in Yerushalayim, and I'm not letting the Hamasnikim move into my Kodesh HaKadoshim of my mind and my heart and fill me with the stupidity of their evil, deranged fantasies of what they would like to do to us, okay? That is the last thing that I allow into my personal space of my mind and my heart. That is not what belongs in my Kodesh HaKadoshim. It doesn't belong in any of our Kodesh HaKadoshim of the mind and the heart. That is not called identifying with Tzaras Yisrael, to sit and wallow in fear and tension and anxiety over things that are happening, things that have happened, things that you're afraid will happen, okay? That is not called being Mishtatef B'Tzar Yisrael. Get your Tillim out. Get your Tillim out when you read the words, Elokim Moshiv Yechidim Baisa. Yeah, those are words from Tehillim. The Tehillim is filled from beginning to end, from opening to closing, okay, with the most powerful words of security and strength and hope and identification with Tzaras Yisrael, and everything exactly in the right, correct way, so that it builds your Jewish heart and doesn't break your Jewish heart. And so I highly recommend that when you are feeling any degree of tension, concern, fear, or worry, and you're feeling Tzaras Yisrael, open the Tehillim or open your mouth and start doing some Hisbodedus, whatever. But you don't sit there. Do not give Hamas an outpost in your holy Jewish mind and in your holy Jewish heart. They do not get entry to that space. Okay? Okay. So